Hi guys, it's Elaine here. Today I am talking to you guys about Colombia. And you guys may have seen that I've mentioned it before. I wrote blogs about it, and a lot of people have reached out to me because in the last few years I've gone there multiple times. I've traveled through Medellin, which is, by the way, my favorite, Bogota, Cali, and Cartagena as well. Cartagena? I can never really say it right. But anyways, I have fallen in love with Colombia. Like, the culture, the vibe, like the parts of it that has city, and then the parts of it that has beautiful, amazing nature, the people, and all of that. And I've done a good amount of traveling. Majority solo traveling. I've done a good amount of solo traveling, so I might do another vlog actually to review some of the places I've been and what I think about it. But the reason why I wanted to share with you guys about Colombia first is maybe about 2 years ago. When did I even go there? I think I went there first roughly about 2 years ago. No, that's the last time I went there. It was nearly 2 years ago. The year before that I went as well, and both times I went for about a month and a half, 2 months to different places. So I got a chance to stay there for a while and do the digital nomad thing, and I've gotten to know parts of it pretty well. And then because I wrote that blog, I think it was under 30 experiences about 2 years ago, 3 years ago even, I'm still getting people messaging me, emailing me through all different platforms. I literally get emails from people. I get Facebook messages like through my public page, and then I also get like comments and all these random places of people asking me what it's like to live there, what I recommend. I've had moms message me asking if it's safe for their kid, right, their daughter, to go there. So I'm gonna kind of go through all of that now for you guys, and obviously times have changed over the last 10-20 years, so Colombia isn't the same as whatever you guys watch on Narcos, obviously on Netflix. So I'll go back to about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I don't know, it was a few years ago, I'll have to dig it up, is when I went by myself to Colombia. And people were like, oh my God. And the first time I went, it was either 2016 or 2017. And my friends were like, oh my God, like, I know you're ballsy, but you should not go to Colombia by yourself. And I was like, it'd be fine. And I did look up obviously certain neighborhoods, and I ended up staying in Poblado, which is where a lot of the tourists or the digital nomads would stay. I stayed in Envigado, which is the less busy area. It's like up top at the kind of mountain where you kind of pass by if you're leaving the airport to go to the city center. And then of course I also went to Cartagena, and I went to Bogota. And then my second trip, obviously I took my friend back, my friend Aaron, who you guys will see or have seen in some of my other videos. He's from Australia, and he was like, you gotta take me, like, since I was raving about it and a lot of my friends wanted me to take them, and some of them ended up traveling there afterwards. So I went with him, and I definitely took him to Medellin, I took him to Bogota, and we went to Cali as well. So my first experience was literally just falling in love with the vibe. And the vibe goes from like people, culture, just how the day-to-day life is, how people interact with you, right? Especially if you are not from there and your Spanish sucks like me, and you end up using sign language. You're like, I remember saying like, yeah, Cerrado, and FYI, it's not even Cerrado. I my Spanish is whack, even though I'm dating a Mexican. But anyways, my Spanish sucks, and the level of warmth and willingness from people, like everyone looking to help you out, like on the streets, is amazing. Like, people are very warm. They're not like, why are you asking me for directions, which I have definitely experienced in other countries and other places I've traveled to. There's this like standoffish vibe, which is also why I always tell my friends, I don't really ever see myself living in the majority of like parts of Asia, because Asian culture is very different than, well, the rest of the world, but like Latin culture, I will say. Like in Asia, most parts of Asia, I feel people are like minding their own business and they want you to mind your business, your own business. And there's definitely no hugs flying around, right? For the most part. I think Bali would be the exception of the places I've gone to in Asia. But I felt the warmth of the people in Colombia, especially Medellin. Can't say the exact same for Bogota. So I felt just very welcomed. Now, second, let's get into weather. Weather in Medellin is like perfect. I believe it's perfect like all year round, but it's a little humid, right? It's a little humid. Not like nowhere near as humid as Cartagena, by the way, but it's like, it's beautiful, it's warm. Sometimes it rains, but it's still warm, so you're fine. Like you never actually have to wear a jacket. Maybe at night you'll put on like an extra layer, but the weather is amazing. And then Medellin itself has like so many different parts to it, right? There's obviously poblado and more concentrated areas that looks also more modern. And I also did a lot of exploring outside of the popular areas, like where it's more, like I went to like Plaza Minorista, where my friends from Colombia are like, why did you go there? It's so not touristy. But I went there because I heard it was the most like authentic market and one of the oldest markets, and I love fruits. So that's like a total different environment, right? I took a taxi there twice, actually. Both times I went back, and there was like this abundance of fruits, and you definitely don't see like new buildings, people that speak English. Like for sure the first time around I went, it was only me, and I probably saw a couple other foreigners, but everyone seemed pretty local. So there's many places that you can go to get that like authentic vibe where you're not in the digital nomad space or the touristy space. And I love that about Medellin. And then there's plenty parts surrounding that just has so much like green hills, a beautiful view of the city, and that's a lot more calm compared to, of course, the more centralized locations as well. So I just love that it had the best of like all worlds in one. It had places where I could feel like I could speak super broken Spanish with my hands and ask for directions, order in English, Spanglish. There's parts where it's like people are like, WTF are you talking about? Which is awesome because I really got to like stretch and push myself out of my comfort zone to order, to buy things, to like, I don't know, negotiate pricing. And it was just a very like amazing like cultural experience to see how one part or certain parts of the city, things cost like cheap compared to America, but it changed a lot the second time I went back. Like prices were like double and triple for certain things, maybe because over the years people have seen Colombia as like, okay, safe to go to now, safe to visit now, safe to live in now. And I'm sure prices and real estate and everything has been going up. But if you go to the more like authentic places, right, or the places that are just poorer without a lot of the digital community or the tourists or whatnot or the visitors, is you see people literally like just working. And some of them, you know, I found out makes like 50 cents a day or $1 a day, and you're like, what the like, you see that, you see like poverty, right? And you see people that are also just like so happy despite making whatever dollars, $1 a day. And there's this like feeling. And by the way, I did not watch Narcos before I went to Colombia, and I've always been fascinated with like Latin America, South America, and Colombia, and I've always wanted to visit. I don't even know why. I didn't know much about the whole Pablo thing or anything like that, but I just learned so much about the Colombian people being very resilient people, being happy people despite all the adversity that they have gone through. And that was very beautiful. And the people that I met there, I will say I've made some good friends there as well, even with the language barrier. I made some good friends there, just going out, like to the coffee shop. I went to a co-working space, multiple co-working spaces, and I met some cool people there that did speak English, and we ended up being friends. And they ended up like taking me out, like drinking, to drink, I don't drink very much, by the way, to drink like aguardiente, which is like, for someone that doesn't drink, that is some hard, nasty shit. But it was very like, the hospitality and the warmth and the welcoming was just so out of this world for me. And literally so many times that I went out with them, like they didn't even like let me pay. Like, I'm not speaking for everyone, but like the people that I met, the friends that I met, you know, we hung out, and like they took me to like Guadalupe, they took me to like their farm town, they're like, and told me the history of when like basically all hell broke loose and everything was like bombed and shot up and everything. Like I literally got to see firsthand. I don't really know the village or whatever, but I went to all different parts surrounding Medellin, like an hour, 2 and 3 hours away, and they took me to their old family home. And so yeah, it was just like, it's indescribable, the hospitality and generosity that I experienced, despite like, it's not like people are making like crazy amounts of money there. I think I asked around, right? Like the people that worked at the market, some of them literally made 50 cents, $1, a couple dollars. Then there's people like the entrepreneurs, the engineers, or the doctors. I believe the average salary from when I asked was like $800, like $500 to $1,000, which is not a lot. And the cost is not cheap nowadays, especially if you live in the touristy area. So I'll break it down for you guys a little bit. So if you live in the touristy digital nomad, like Poblado or like Lurales, I don't really know how to say it, but in those areas, it's expensive-ish, especially compared to people that lives there, right, and makes money there, right? You're not bringing American dollars or your money from Australia or Canada or wherever. Meals range from literally, I would say, $5 to $15, and that's, you know, the new hip area. Sometimes more, right? I've definitely had way more expensive meals before. So $5 to $15 per average meal, right? There's this bomb ass steakhouse though. I don't remember what it's called, but those are like way more. It's like $50 a meal, but you eat like crazy. And then you go to other parts and you can get like meals and like cheap eats, right? Like empanadas or other meals for like 50 cents, right? 50 cents or $1 or $2. Like literally, I remember the first time I went and I was like, I didn't know how to count the dollars, the money there because there's way more zeros in the back. And you're like, shit, like how much is this like amount? And so I literally gave someone what was like $50 worth, like US dollars worth in, is it called pesos again? It's been a little while. I travel, so I don't know the currency. But I gave someone what was the equivalent of like $50 when my empanada was like 50 cents. And the man totally ran after me. It's like, hey, this is all your money back. I'm like, oh shit. So I did the calculation after and I was like, oh dang, I almost paid for a $50 empanada. So point is, there's everything from cheap eats to literally paying tourist dollars for food. Food wise, I will say, I've never been a huge fan of most food from like Latin South America compared to Asian food. Like, I'm Chinese. Chinese food is not my favorite, but I love Vietnamese. I love Korean food. I love Japanese food. I love Thai food. So I'm an Asian food kind of girl, and I love like pasta and pizza and like whatever, like shit like that, like American food, right? Whatever, like America that has all the other diverse foods that other cultures have brought in. So I've never been a huge fan of like Latin food because a lot of it has meat, right? Peruvian food's another story. There's a lot of seafood, but I feel like a lot of the places I've been in South America has a lot of meat. People are meat eaters. So there's a lot of plates, like for example, pendeja. I'm like, oh shit, I'm saying this wrong. Is it pendeja paisa? I gotta look it up again, guys. It's called something paisa. Is it bandera paisa? Clearly I'm rusty, but basically it's this plate. It's this huge ass plate with rice, I believe beans, and hella meat. So I tried this multiple times, right? Like my friend Natalia was like, you gotta try it. She's Colombian and she lives in LA. She's like, you gotta try this, bandeja paisa. And so I tried it multiple times and I'm not the biggest fan because it has like meat, beans, a little bit of avocado, right? In some places, and hella meat. It was like pork chop, and then it was like sausage, and it was just like, it felt like to me 90% meat and then 10% everything else. I'm like, yo, where's my veggies at? So anyways, that's one of the really popular dishes, and I've tried a bunch of other ones, and I would say in general, because I'm not like a huge like meat eater, I would say the food is not my favorite, but there are plenty of options, right? There's like Asian food and there's like whatever, hamburgers and stuff like that. I will, however, say there's something that I love. Like you can get these amazing, are they called arepas? I think so. Arepas? They're like, they fry it in the pan thing. And so on the streets, on many streets, right, in carts and shit, you can get arepas. And it's hella good. And I'm sure it's like $1 or like whatever, less even. And they put cheese on it, and it's just so good. Like, anyways. So there's little eats that I find extremely tasty. There's like these cool kind of new hipster spots popping up, right? With like ice cream, and like there's, oh my gosh, amazing juices. I will say there's amazing juices because I believe Colombia is the second or third most biodiverse country in the world. That means they grow hella shit. They have an abundance of fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables I've never ever seen before, guys. This applies for the supermarket, but if you really want the real experience, like the authentic experience, you guys have to go to one of the traditional huge plazas, right? Of course, everything's cash only. It ain't no credit card situation, so bring your cash. Yes, of course, watch your bags, right? Like, even though I feel my verdict of Colombia and Medellin and all the places is it's generally safe, the rule of thumb is don't be an idiot traveling, right? Don't be holding your fancy ass iPhone and camera and cash all over the place. So be discreet and be safe, right? Don't be a dumbass. So I will say I highly recommend, as one of my top, 3 to 5 things, is go to one or more authentic, traditional, like, they're not called supermarkets, they're like farmers markets, but they're open every single day for the most part. And you will see fruits and vegetables that you have never, ever seen before. I actually recently, one of my favorites is the ochua? I think that's how you say it. It's like a little, almost like a tomato, but it's like a sweeter, it's like a fruit, and it has like almost those tomatillo leaves around it. And I started seeing them at Whole Foods, right? Like a few years after I tried them in Colombia. But there's amazing fruits over there. Oh, just so delicious. And therefore, juice, you can get juice for a very good price. And apparently what I learned, I don't know how true this is, I learned from a Colombian, like he was telling us as we went on this like tour, that for foreigners, aka us, they make the juice sweet. but that doesn't necessarily mean that the locals there drink it sweet. So you can just say like no sugar, right? Or is that con azúcar? Anyway, my Spanish sucks. But anyways, juice, all these different types of variations of juice. I will say, oh my gosh, you can drink juices every day, and that shit ain't gonna cost you $10 to $12 like they do here in America, or at least in San Francisco, LA, and New York. So it's really amazing. What else? Food. Ooh, okay. One of my favorite, like, I'm just speaking because I'm thinking, so I'm just speaking what I'm thinking. And so one of the best like desserts I've had, I don't know what it's called anymore, but it's a little popsicle that this lady makes. They sell it in different places, but apparently this lady that lives up in Comuna 13, which is Comuna 13, which is also, for those of you guys that did watch Narcos, it's the neighborhood that was notoriously known to be run by Pablo Escobar, and it's, you know, it's where those houses are up on the hills, and it's super narrow, and it's like one way in and one way out. So I definitely went there twice. It's an amazing, like, it's so beautiful, and I hadn't seen anything like it before. And they say don't go there at night, and I didn't go there at night, right? Every time I went, it's with other people. But just the amount of graffiti and art and colors of the houses, and some of them are like really broken down, and some of them have been repaired, and the people and the art, you see people dancing there, you people creating art there, and it's just so beautiful. You have to see it. I would say, I don't know, take a tour, go with friends during the day, and stay safe. But I did not feel like threatened or unsafe or anything like that. And I will say there's been a huge difference between the first time I went, which was 4 years ago, I don't know, and then the second time I went, which was 2 years ago. Huge difference. The first time I went, that popsicle thing I was telling you about, it was like, I swore it was called a michelada, but there's no alcohol. It's like lime juice or something, and with like mango chunks. So good. And it cost, I believe, 50 cents. I don't know if it's 50 cents our money or their money, but it was very cheap. It was something like a quarter or 50 cents, or 50 cents in like Colombian money. The second time I went back, it was 3 times that price, and so was everything else. The second time I went back 2 years ago in 2018, everything was more expensive, and there were way more tourists. And the first time I only met a couple, like 2 or 3 Americans. And then the second time I went back, there was a ton of Americans and others, but I feel like Americans have a certain like view of Colombia and like, oh my gosh, so dangerous. And so there were also a bunch of merch for sale, right? Which I totally bought some. I'm a sucker for merch and souvenirs. And so now it's becoming like a touristy thing, like the thing to do. And therefore prices have definitely gone up all around, and same for real estate. So if you go to Comuna 13, you gotta ask people where the lady is that sells the mango popsicle. It's in a little plastic cup, like the disposable plastic cups. The stick is on there, and it's like made like upside down, and it's so good. There's different flavors, but I highly recommend the mango one. I will eat 10 of them in one sitting if I could. I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of things here, but I will say there's an abundance of coffee shops. So many coffee shops, which is my dream because I am super addicted to coffee. And I will say this, people rave about Colombian coffee all the time, right? And I like Colombian coffee. I think Cuban espresso is the best. And I also learned something from the locals there, and that is, even though great coffee beans come from Colombia, the coffee shops and the stores or whatever does not necessarily have the best cups of produced coffee. So get this, and it's super windy right now, but even though Colombia has the best coffee beans, it does not mean that the stores and the cafes and the coffee shops produces you the best cup of coffee to your table. I'm like, why is that? And yeah, I felt like the coffee was good, but it wasn't like, oh my God, so amazing. And they say that the reason is because, for the most part, the locals, right, the Colombians there, don't necessarily, a few reasons, value like spending bank on coffee. Like they just want to buy their coffee, so they might go to the place that sells coffee and bread, and that's it. So therefore, they don't spend the time to like hone in on their craft. And I'm like, well, why doesn't people just hire like a teacher from like Italy to teach you guys how to make like the best craft, the best cup of coffee? I'm sure there's great coffee spots, by the way, but I'm just saying in general. And then they're like, I don't know, like we don't value it like that. And the second reason is, and this applies for more than just coffee, Colombia sends off, right, ships off, exports the best of whatever, the best of their coffee beans, the best of their fruits and vegetables to other places because that's how they make their money. I'm like, oh. So it's similar, right, to Cuba. Cuban cigars or like Cuban coffee or whatever. The best gets sold. And then the country is left with the rest. So I'm like, oh. So FYI, do go to Colombia and try their coffee, definitely. And do bring back beans, but don't be super shocked if the place you go to doesn't have the best prepared coffee. It doesn't mean that Colombian coffee is not good. It's just maybe not every place prepares it as fancy. What else? I have so many things to talk about. Like, I'll probably do another video, but I will say there's an abundance of, and I feel like this video I only covered Medellin. So I think I want to do another like part 2 or part 3 for Colombia, because I'm literally just telling you mostly about Medellin right now. So also there's an abundance of coffee shops. Wait, no, co-working spaces. We're onto co-working spaces now. If you're a digital nomad like myself, I don't really consider myself a super digital nomad anyways, but all my businesses are online. So, but I have slowed down on the traveling to certain places for a month here, 3 months here, and 3 months there. I'm mainly in New York now, in California, and with coronavirus, I'm definitely not really traveling because I don't want to get stuck somewhere and not come back. So there's an abundance of co-working spaces. I've checked out maybe 10 altogether, and there's a lot of little ones. There's a lot of little ones that ends up being like pretty cool. It's a nice vibe, but very little privacy. There's like bigger ones like Selena, which is now they are like a co-working space and like a hostel, and they have a bar and they have events. So that's definitely targeted towards all foreigners. You rarely see someone from Colombia like working there. It's like people from freaking New Zealand and Australia and the US and wherever. So that's cool. I like a mixture of both. Like I like meeting the people there and learning about their businesses instead of just being in this really secluded tourist / traveler / digital nomads only. But those places do tend to have more space and more amenities and maybe even faster Wi-Fi. There's a bunch of really big ones that I might do another video on later. And I would say it is becoming kind of saturated. Like some co-working spaces I'll see are fairly empty. And some of them have shut down between the first time I went and the second time I went. So it's like the cool thing, but I would say not all of them does it right. So my recommendation is if you are planning to go there to like work for a couple months or even a couple weeks, or you just want to try the experience, go to, I think it's coworker.com. I gotta post a link for you guys later. I believe it's coworker.com or cowork.com. You can get a day pass from a lot of them for free. And then if you don't, you can always call in to see if, or message them on Facebook to see if they offer like a tour. Some of them will charge you per the day as well. And then of course go from like a bulk of X amount of hours that you can use up, and then the weekly and the monthly and the annual, of course. So I will say there's an abundance of co-working spaces. internet in general is pretty decent. Like at my Airbnbs, I've always had pretty decent internet. At the cafes, it's always been pretty decent internet. But FYI, I am only speaking about places that are more like trendy, right? Like, or for tourists. I cannot say if you go to Plaza Minorista, there's Wi-Fi, because there's none. If you go to places that are not like centralized or is filled with tourists, you're kind of screwed. Your data is like, you won't get great internet. So when I go to places that's super like outskirts and places that are not where I normally hang out, I basically try to screenshot the directions to how to get home, like whether that's you taking the train or the taxi or an Uber. I try to be very like, I try to have multiple ways mapped out just in case like Wi-Fi hits the fan, just in case I don't know how to get back via one method. Can't call an Uber or whatever else that may be, which has totally happened before. And you're stuck with a taxi and you gotta ask for the price and make sure they have a meter on. What else? Places I absolutely recommend visiting. I feel like I didn't really prepare that well for this vlog because there's so many, but I will say off the top of my head, definitely recommend Poblado. That's like the place where it's happening, the parties, the tourists, the digital nomads, all of that. Definitely recommend it. I also recommend Envigado because Envigado is like, it's up top on the hills. And if you guys have watched Narcos, I think that's where Pablo like had one of his houses. So you have this beautiful view of Medellin, and it's just, oh my gosh, so incredible. Like, it's amazing. Another place I would recommend is absolutely Comuna 13. That's Comuna 13. I would recommend going there during the day, not too late, maybe with some people, and just see the history. I really recommend doing like a tour there as well, and then maybe going by maybe not yourself, but going again like separate from the tour, just so you're on your own timeline, because there's so much to explore. And it's safe. Yes, it's safe. Maybe not the best at night, and yes, you hear all these people getting their shit jacked. I have never gotten my shit jacked. My friend that went with me didn't get his shit jacked, and he had like an expensive camera and everything, but it's just being careful. I've also heard a share of people getting their shit jacked, but that's anywhere. Super recommend Plaza Minorista again, which is like the fruit market. It's like I could spend like half a day or an entire day there if my backpack wasn't so heavy filled with fruits. The last time we went back, like I think the people there found it quite amusing that an Australian dude, my good friend Aaron, and me, we were there and we're like talking it up and we're recording content and whatever, and so we got a bunch of free fruit. So it's just very fun. It was amazing. Some people wanted to take photos with us. I don't know if it's because I'm a blue-haired Chinese girl, look like an alien. So really recommend that. I do recommend going to Guatapé, which is that big rock thing, and there's this beautiful view, and it's really busy. If anything, and there's a little city there. If anything, I wish that a lot of the places that were beautiful didn't have so many tourists. There's another place that's like Santo Domingo, where you take like a little cable car, like those with the little cables. You go up and you go to this like little nature place, and they have food and little gifts, and then you can go further as well. It's just so many trees there. It's beautiful when you're taking that ride. I gotta look up what it's actually super duper called, but it's beautiful. There's a bunch of like authentic places that my friends took me to that were like so not touristy, and I don't remember the names of any of them, but it was fun. It's like there's plenty of dancing places, bunch of food places, so much beautiful nature. Like, it's just out of this world, and I barely experienced a small chunk of Colombia or even Medellin and surrounding, and I spent like 3 months there. So I would say that's it. Like for now, maybe I'll do another video where I will list off all my recommendations and to loop back around as to whether it's safe. Yes, it's safe. Did I ever feel like shit was sketchy and I like felt scared? One time, only one time, and that was one time when it was the middle of the day. It was a Sunday, I believe. I took a taxi. It's always a little weird. Like I'd rather take Uber, but it's illegal, by the way. So when you take Uber, which people do, they drive Uber there, you have to pretend like this person is your friend or your cousin. And I'm like, don't know how I'm gonna look like your cousin, but I can pretend like I'm the girlfriend or the friend or like whatever, you know, a second, third cousin. So you don't tell the police if you get pulled over that you are a Uber passenger. You pretend like you guys know each other and you're homies, so you always sit in the front. You don't sit in the back, right? It's not like someone chauffeuring you around. You sit in the front, like you guys are homies. But sometimes Uber is not an option. You end up taking a taxi, and I've had a few times where it's kind of sketchy, where I know they overcharged me, they took the long route, and because I don't speak Spanish, it's hard for me to tell them which way or the direction. So I have been like not scammed, but like definitely charged more, so semi-scammed, a few times taking taxi. So I do not prefer it. There's other apps that lets you call taxi for like a better price. I don't remember what they're called. I'll ask my friend. But one time I took a taxi and this guy, the taxi driver, kept looking at me funny. And so my gut told me that I didn't want him to drop me off at my house. Like my gut just told me that. So I had him drop me off 2 blocks, and this was near like the main park in Poblado. Drop me off there. I had him drop me off there, and then he was like, okay, here. And I was like, yes, here. And then I got off, and then he took a U-turn, and as I was walking back to my house, right, like I saw him take a U-turn, and then he stopped right there, and he just like looked at me like for a while. So I just kept walking, and I walked slow because I didn't even want him to see where I lived, but he just stopped there. And I like, there was no reason for him to go there because where he stopped, it was a one-way street going up that way, but he just stopped there. And eventually he left, and I was kind of weirded out, but the place that I stayed in, it did have like security and everything. It was with my friend Erin. It was like this amazing place. And so we were just like, stay there, work there, like stick to that area for the most part. But I did feel weirded out. Don't know what he was up to. Maybe it's in my head. I am not sure, but that was the only time I recall feeling weirded out and a little bit unsafe. The rest of the times, no, I did not. Always kept my shit. Sometimes in busy places, I keep my backpack in the front, as locals would sometimes tell you as well in specific areas. So I would say I really feel like it's a safe place. Mind you that I went there all alone the first time around. It was just me, a non-Spanish speaking girl from America that's Chinese with colored hair as well, I think with color. So I felt safe. I really felt safe. So it sucks that I have seen other blogs and vlogs and people saying, oh, this is whack, so dangerous, never coming back here again, unsafe country, unsafe city, blah, blah, blah. That was not my experience. And I choose to believe that. I choose to believe that. There's bad people everywhere. There's crime everywhere. There's people that jack shit everywhere. I do not feel that Colombia or Medellin is extra. Like it's not a place that does that more. So that is my conclusion overall. And I would say it's a place I love. It's a place I would always go back. It's a place that I've advertised to a lot of my friends. And it's a place with really amazing people and an amazing culture and just so much history. Some of it's sad, right? Some of it that angers me, like when I learn about it. But it's like such a place with resilient people, with generous people, and like the vibe, the weather, like how it looks, Bogota is another story. The weather is not as nice over there. By the way, Bogota is kind of like New York City. And so I would say, and Cartagena is so hot and humid. So, and Cali is like a nice in between. But I would say Medellin has the best weather. Cali, pretty nice, still hot. Cartagena is like, I want to rip my skin off. It's so humid and hot, and I wasn't super like interested in it. I'm not super into beaches, and there was only this one area, like the old city, that had stuff to do, and then everyone's like trying to sell you stuff, so I wasn't super into it. Bogota I enjoyed, but due to the weather and the storming and the rain and like the cold, I just didn't like it as much. So Medellin, totally, that's where my heart is at. That's a place I would always continue to visit and bring people to. And I'd love to like go with like my best friends. I'd love to go with my boyfriend, and I would love to show my brother. Like, it's the place that I love to brag about, because of all the places I've been to, I feel that that place is like one of the most livable. As in, it's not just let me visit this and get the heck out of here. It's like, oh, I would totally come back. I would totally like live here for some time, right? Like, so that's one of the few places. I love Tokyo because of, oh my God, total different type of magic, right? Like, you know, I live in New York City, so Tokyo is the closest to that. However, the people aren't as like warm, I would say, and friendly. There's a lot of stimulation, right? Bomb ass food, lights, never sleeping. Like, so there's so much amazingness about Tokyo that I'll share another time in another video. And like Bali is also another really amazing place, but total different vibe as well. So I will say Medellin, Colombia, definitely, if you've been thinking about going, you should go. If you want recommendations, hit me up. You guys can comment below or shoot me a message on my social media platforms or my website. I am always very passionate to like get those emails and to respond and correspond with those emails, because yeah, I love the place. I'm sure I can even introduce you guys to some of my friends there. Very friendly people, so I'm sure they'll be down to like meet some new friends and show you guys around as well. If you've been to Colombia, different places, let me know how it was for you. What was your favorite? Did you feel safe there? And until next time, stay safe. I wanted to do this video because I really missed traveling. Yesterday it was brought up that traveling out of the country is out of the question. My brother brought that up because he's like, dude, you just never know what's gonna happen in this moment, and you don't want to get stuck there and not be able to come back. So it's not 100% out of the question for me, but yes, I would be more hesitant to travel like I used to before during this time. And I also did hear that Colombia is getting hit pretty hard with COVID as well. Obviously nowhere as bad as the US, but I will say they are less equipped financially to like handle it for places with poverty. So I really hope that it doesn't affect this beautiful, amazing country that I love so much. And that's it. Stay tuned. If you haven't liked and subscribed, please do. I do a bunch of different videos on different topics, but traveling is definitely one of my biggest passions. So there will be more videos on Colombia, Tokyo, Bali, Thailand, and many other different places. And talk soon. Bye.